most people. You're dialing in from the US. Appreciate everybody coming in, joining us. We're going to give everybody, Janet, probably 60 more seconds for people to start trickling in, and then we'll kick it right off.
Sounds good.
Okay, appreciate everybody coming in. I'm going to kick off today's session for this webinar. And we're still, of course, in the welcome session, there will probably be more people dialing in, but let's just get started. Okay, so hello, everybody. Really appreciate you all dialing in, spending time with us today. My name is Jason Fan, founder and CEO at Forma, and I will be your host and the guy for today's webinar and the discussion on lifestyle spending accounts, otherwise known as LSAs. Super excited to be here today talking to you, everybody, about this topic. And really excited, of course, to welcome our guest speaker, Janet, Vice President of Research from the Josh Bersin Company. And Janet, would you be able to just give a quick intro for yourself and also what the company does?
Sure. Thanks, Jason. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be. As Jason said, I am the Vice President of Research here at the Josh Bersin Company. For those of you who have been in the HR space for a long time, you probably know the Josh Bersin name, the person, the brand quite well. Josh has been an industry analyst for probably 25, 30 years now, really studying HR. And the company now in this latest sort of evolution is really an HR advisory and analyst firm. We really, sort of support HR teams, HR executives, and provide guidance on trends in HR. What are the insights? What's happening? We do a lot of research, and we also work very closely with the HR technology community. And so we get to know these incredible technologies and solutions like Forma, and help make sense of how that technology and how these platforms can help enable an irresistible organization. A little bit about me, just couple of words. I've been in HR for about 20 plus years. I've been an HR practitioner, an HR leader. I've been a consultant. I've been a researcher. So have really studied this topic for a long time. Very passionate about all things people and talent. And my role at Bersin is really around research and sort of insights and thought leadership. And I really do focus a lot of my research in a few key areas, including health and well-being. So I'll talk to you a little bit about a big study that we just published on healthy organizations. I also look at talent acquisition as a portfolio, and actually I'm just about to kick off another big piece of research on HR operating models. So delighted to be here. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Appreciate that intro, Janet. Super excited to have you with us. So in the next steps, I want to quickly talk about the agenda for today. We will first kick off with an introduction to who we are and what Forma does. Promise a short and sweet intro. Janet is going to introduce the concept of a healthy organization and a lot of the research that she and the Josh Bersin Company has done on this topic. And then we will then do a fireside chat style discussion, dive into the concept of an LSA, Lifestyle Spending Account Program, how it can help you create a healthy organization and what are the advantages of such a setup. And then we're actually going to follow up with a couple of case studies that Janet has done with a couple of Forma customers. Okay. All right. Without further ado, I will jump into the intro section. Okay. So I think everybody can agree that over the last 3 years or so, the only constant in our lives has been change, right? Since COVID happened back in early 2020, we've been through a lot of ups and downs and inflation recently, international conflict in Europe, uncertainty in the economy that is not going away, and a lot of these more big events, right, that really affect our society. And for a lot of us as benefits professionals, operators in the day-to-day, our first instinct would be, hey, how can I support my employees in the way that matters to them most, right? But since there are so many different trends that we have to navigate, we inevitably run into the question of, well, just how many of these benefits programs do we really need? How many of this can we even put in place? Is that sustainable, right? And many in the industry have begun to using the term point solution fatigue, point solution burnout. And I'm sure that many of you here on the call with us today are probably no stranger to this concept, right? So here at Forma, we believe that we can actually meet employers where they are without experiencing what we call point solution fatigue. We believe in really giving employees the ability to choose what's the most meaningful to them and really focus on supporting every employee in ways that individuals need it the most. Okay, so the way that we do it is through a very customizable spending account platform, right? It's a simple concept really for you as the employer, as the benefits professionals, operators. It really is simple. We just really need two things from you, right? You let us know your budget funding, and also you let us know the rules around where you would like your employees to be able to spend it. Okay. We then deliver to the other side a great employee experience so that the employees individually can have the chance to choose programs that actually matter to them based on their needs, right? Within your funding and within your rules. And all of that during that time, Forma as the administrator sits behind the scenes. We take care of virtually all administration, compliance, processing, funding flow, international conversion, all of those pieces, and that we make sure that we put the best interest of mind for you as a benefits professional and also your employees. Okay, so I want to quickly talk about what exactly are the kind of programs that we can cover. So right off the gate, this is going to be a big focus for our discussion today with Janet. We, of course, support LSA programs, right? We also do HRA. We also do pre-tax programs. And some of the examples under LSA would be lifestyle spending account, wellness subsidies, tuition reimbursement, work from home support, donation programs, many, many more. Under the HRA, it could be fertility related, gender information. It could be one of the more recent topics, medical travel assistance to support employees during the change in Roe versus Wade. On the pre-tax side, some of the more traditional ones, FSA, HSA commuter programs, and really is up to you to decide how you want to create these spending account programs to support your employees. Okay. For the LSA specifically, we have a very interesting way of describing it. If you can say it out loud, we can probably build a program for you that is dependent on your benefit strategy and depending on how you want to support your employee base. Okay, really quite flexible. And so far, we've seen a lot of success from our members, 98 customer satisfaction rating, 75 NPS for both our members and our customers on the admin side, and 99% retention rate for our customer base. We now cover a little bit over 300,000 total members across 140 customers in more than 90 countries worldwide, truly global solution. Okay. And we really pride ourselves in helping some of the most innovative companies on the planet run their benefits programs. And that truly aims to support every employee that they have during the most important moments in life that matters the most to them. Okay. That's it. Promise that's all the talk I'm going to give on the short and sweet intro. At the end of this webinar, though, just want to flash this. We are also going to provide a couple ways to get in touch and a few white papers that could be a very helpful resource for you, right? How do we prove out the ROI? How do we make a business case for LSAs? How do we get started on the LSA program? We want to be able to share that resource with you at the end. So stay till the end with us. And that said, Janet, I would love to pass the virtual mic over to you for the next segment and learn more about the healthy organization concept.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jason. I love the sort of the intro and the setup. And, you know, what I wanted to, when we talked about what we were going to sort of cover in today's conversation, and there's so much to talk about when we think about health and well-being. And so what I really wanted to talk about with the group today is just share a little bit about what we're seeing in the market. So, you know, we kicked off maybe 18 months ago, maybe almost 2 years ago, a massive global study on health and well-being, and really, you know, with the understanding of, the acceleration of the importance of health and well-being during the pandemic into the, sort of the height of the pandemic. And as we were having these conversations early in our research, we really started to hear from organizations that while there was this sort of undeniable effort to protect and take care of their employees, they were still struggling to know what was the right level of, sort of benefit portfolio, what was the right kind of well-being suite of offerings, what were the right platforms or technologies or solutions, and asking these really good questions amidst the great migration and burnout rates on the rise, and employees sort of communicating back that they needed more or different. And so what we, and this is a bit of an eye chart, so I'll just kind of talk through it broadly, but what we set out to do was, in having these early conversations with HR leaders, is to say, look, we know that there are just hundreds of practices, people practices, organizational practices, HR practices, solutions that companies are deploying to protect and care for their workforce. And we really wanted to get a sense of what's working and what's maybe not working so well amongst all of these practices. So what you see in front of you, folks, on the slide is our framework for what we call the healthy organization. So this is sort of a high-level framework for all of the elements and dimensions of well-being that companies are thinking about in varying amounts. No one is doing all of these things at the top level, but we wanted to measure a couple of things. One, we wanted to measure, and Jason, you know this well, we wanted to know how much of each of these are organizations engaging in right now. How many of these and at what maturity are companies deploying practices to deliver, health solutions? And then the second part of the question is, which of these are having an impact, not just on people and health outcomes, which are, of course, important things like retention and engagement, healthcare claim costs, absenteeism, for sure, but also other parts of the business. So what is the impact of being healthy? What impact is that having on your business outcomes, your financial outcomes, your customer loyalty and satisfaction, your innovation and ability to be, sort of a market leader? And so what you see across this framework that sort of set us on our journey was, look, we wanted to look at not just those traditional elements of health. Most companies now, I would say, are thinking about well-being in a kind of a holistic way. So it's a combination of physical health, mental health, financial health, and social community support and service. But it's also, it goes beyond that. There's safety. That's never been more important than it has been in the last couple of years, both physical safety and psychological safety, but also the culture itself in the organization. So what are the behaviors or factors or practices in the organization, maybe outside of HR and benefits, that are perhaps fostering or maybe even hindering a company's efforts to be healthy at the core? And then underneath it all, of course, what are those technologies that companies are using, to what effect, and how equipped is HR in being able to support and sort of drive health across the organization, and what collaboration is needed. So this was sort of our starting place. And I want to just share a story before I jump into the good stuff, the results and what we found. And it was, it's such a representative story, Jason. I know we've talked about it. I spoke to a CHRO of a massive healthcare, hospital network in the US, and they were, an organization that, as we went into this research, were very mature in their well-being strategy. They, established a global strategy. They were delivering on the local level. They had a really good listening strategy in place. And so as a result of that, the company, the organization was just before the pandemic in the midst of building their flagship sort of facility, right? Their primary care facility, no expenses spared. This was going to be their premier clinical access point for their network of hospitals, attracting the best, the best clinical care, best clinical workforce, physicians and surgeons and nurses. And one of the things that they knew they wanted to do was to ensure that they were taking care of their clinicians. And so given their health strategy, their well-being strategy, they established and they allocated funds to reserve like premium real estate in the facility for, in this case, for nurses to have rest and recovery rooms, right? And they said, you know, we know that our nurses need that. We know that recovery is a part of being able to engage with patients, to deliver quality care. And we know that that's, you know, it's core to our philosophy. Fast forward, about a year that the facility is open, and the CHRO shared with me that they quickly realized no one was taking advantage. No one was actually using these rest and recovery rooms. And as they dug into it and they sort of had this conversation with clinicians, they quickly realized that no one had the time to avail themselves of this, right? No one had the ability to be backfilled, say, for example, in this case, on the floor and go and have that recovery time. And so it was really an aha moment for this organization and for many others that we talked to really start thinking about health and well-being in a much more holistic, meaningful, flexible way. And that's, I think, the heart of what this research shows. Jason, if you want to go to the next slide, let me talk a little bit about what we found. So we surveyed hundreds of organizations to get a sense, as I said, of both what practices are in play right now and what is actually having an impact. And as we went through this research and we analyzed the results, it became clear that organizations, there are about 15 practices out of the 100 or so that we measured. 15 or so are making a huge kind of an outsized impact. And when you looked at these 15 practices, we call them the essential practices, there are some organizations that are just leading the way. And what's really interesting is as we started to think about the maturity in those high impact practices, and those are impacts, across the organization. This is no longer health and well-being for HR's sake or for health, for well-being's sake. This is for the organization. We saw that companies fall into sort of these 4 levels of maturity. And so much of what you talked about, Jason, around this kind of flexibility and holistic approach to care and really getting away from just delivering point solutions. You talked about point solution fatigue. That is really at the heart of our level 4 organizations. So I'll just quickly kind of talk through these 4, these 4 levels of maturity. And as I do, I invite all of you to be thinking about your own organization and where you think you are in this maturity model and how you may, continue to your journey towards level 4. So at level 1, sort of the first level here, we call it employee safety. This is characterized, this sort of level of operation is characterized, almost a third of organizations fall into this category, but it really is defined by a view of employees as workers. These are companies across industries that don't necessarily view well-being or health and well-being as a strategic initiative, but rather as a sort of a compliance or regulatory requirement. There's a real focus on benefits and safety here, so this is a really important place to begin. But there's very limited focus on that broader, those broader lenses of well-being, financial support, mental health, social well-being, and very little leadership support beyond, the core HR and benefits team. And then I'm thrilled to say that many companies during the pandemic and after have now made the shift into level 2. And this is a huge mindset shift for the for organizations. This is a place where companies really start to think, and never has this been more required and prevalent than in the last 2 years. Employees are people. They are people with whole lives and whole experiences inside and outside the workplace. And at level 2 is where we found organizations to really switch on to that. The focus on well-being naturally expands at this level, as you would expect it to. Personalization becomes a focus here. And that need to protect employees in their whole lives becomes core to the strategy. So financial fitness and mental health support and social social support, career health, all of those kind of get knitted in here. And then I would say level 3 and 4 are again a big sort of step forward. Level 2 companies, as they move into level 3, they are now confident, Jason, with their they've taken care of their people. They're picking the right solutions. They're offering that kind of holistic approach. And now these companies at level 3 and level 4 are broadening their view. Level 3 companies, we call it healthy work, because this is where we start thinking about the work itself. How healthy is the work? How healthy are our work practices? What kind of accessibility and equitability do we have in our well-being offerings, in our tools and sites? How do we remove barriers from for our people? And that's really that healthy work component. And then our level 4 are pioneers. And we talked to a few of your customers as well, or your client organizations, who I would say are really getting to, are at this point in level 4. This is where well-being and health take a completely different kind of, they take a completely different approach to health and well-being. They are, no longer delivering health to their people, but rather fostering the concept of health throughout the organization. So they think about health, I would say, in 3 lenses. One is healthy people. So there's still a very clear commitment to employee well-being. Healthy work. So what are the, that focus on work and barriers and ways of working. And then healthy culture is that third level or third lens. And that is really about leadership practices and, systems and, management behaviors and, cultural and culture and values in the organization. So our level 4 companies in our research really show a strategic view, and they are pushing that health and well-being right into the corners of the organization. And every decision they make, it really, has that lens. And let's just go one more slide, Jason. I want to share what I like to call the money slide. It's the impact, right? This is where the rubber meets the road. One of the things that we really came away from this research with the sort of validation of is that health and well-being are no longer, as I said earlier, are no longer just something to do because we have to do it as an organization, as HR. This is now about the business itself. In this labor market that we are in, you think about hiring shortages, and we think about inflation rates and industry convergence, and all of these changes that are happening that you mentioned at the beginning of our talk. Choosing the right strategies and approaching health and well-being in this holistic, sort of organizational, cultural way, and using that lens in the choices you make, they yield incredible results. And I mean, I love this slide because it really just puts it all sort of, puts it all in one place. In the center, what you see is that our healthy organizations are companies that are just, they are just outpacing their peers when it comes to all those, people or talent metrics, things like twice as likely to be viewed as a great place to work, or 3 times more likely to engage their employees, 10 times more likely to have lower rates of absenteeism. But the 2 outer kind of ends of this this chart also tell a really important story, and that is, on the left, these are companies that are outpacing far ahead of their peers when it comes to things like delighting their customers. Those lines between corporate brand and employer brand, they've really blurred. And companies that are healthy from the core, or at the core, they are much more likely to have to be able to achieve customer loyalty, to exceed their financial targets, and more likely to be adaptable, flexible, and resilient, and ready to innovate. And I think that's, this is a great way to kind of segue into our fireside chat. Jason, let me turn it back over to you and see, if you have any reactions or questions, and then I know we've got some things to dig into.
For sure. Really appreciate the spectacular insights from the segment, Janet. I personally learned a great deal, right? And one of the big takeaways, I think, is that to create and get to that level 3 or even level 4, level of a healthy organization, from healthy work, healthy organization, there's a lot that companies to do, right? And there's really a lot to need to do on a company level. leadership alignment, there's the establishment of cultural values, and many, many more things. And in the following fireside chat segment, I would love to focus our discussion around, hey, for the HR and benefits practitioners that we have on our call today, how can we contribute, right? How can we aim to have a seat at the table and let our CHRO and let our counterparts and leadership team know, hey, how can we as benefits professionals fine tune our strategy to support that movement towards that healthy organization, right? I think there's a lot more that we can explore, that we can do here. So for everybody in the audience, I would love to talk about three things and with Janet in the next 20 minutes or so. The first one is around how can employer adopt LSAs and what are the advantages? How do we use a flexible benefits design to help the movement towards building a healthy organization, right? I think there's quite a bit of lesson learned here. And then we're going to talk about two case studies. First one is the LSA implementation with a global technology company with 140,000 employees worldwide. Large organization, how are they using the LSA program on their path to becoming a healthy organization, right? And the second one is around, well, seems like LSA is a great concept, but how do we find the funding? How do we think about making a business case? How do we think about reallocating benefits budgets to fund the LSA? And we're going to talk about a case study with a employer that is around 2,500 in employee size, and how they were going to talk about their case of reallocating benefits budget in the world of COVID and how they're adjusting to it. Okay, so Janet, perhaps I'm going to take the screen off
Sure.
for a minute and just talk about these topics with you. So, and the first one is, in your research and in your conversation with HR leaders, benefits leaders in the past, what is your view on LSAs and flexible benefit strategies fit into this overall movement towards healthy organization?
Yeah, well, and I had the pleasure of speaking to several of your your customers at Forma, and there were a number of themes that just sort of emerge when companies like our level 4, like your customers, are thinking differently about health and well-being. And when we think about LSAs and that flexibility of a solution that like Forma, there's a couple of things that popped up. So I would say, first of all, these companies are no longer thinking about benefits as a sort of a back office HR siloed function. This is a corporate and enterprise-wide, organizational, whatever word you want to use, but really a business conversation. And I use the term often when I talk about healthy organization about health at the core, but pushing it out into the corners of the company. And so, I'll pick on a couple of examples from my conversations. One of your customers that I spoke to talked, at length about how the Forma implementation really kind of accelerated the conversations in the company about what is our philosophy of health and well-being. What does it mean to be a healthy organization for us? And I think those conversations are critical, right? So they went out and they talked with the business, with business leaders, with employees, and we heard that in our, in our conversations as well. And in fact, one of the findings that we had, Jason, in our research was when health, when benefits works with the business to define and constantly iterate on the definition of health and well-being and those services and that philosophy, they're it was something like 15 times more likely to succeed and to have overall positive impact than those organizations who don't. So I think that business HR partnership is really crucial, and we heard that from many Forma customers. The other thing that I think level 4 organizations, healthy organizations are thinking about, and I heard this from loud and clear from my conversations with a couple of your clients, was the equity piece. And so when we think about healthy organizations, and this aligns so nicely with our research, pay equity, accessibility, inclusion, all of those kind of cultural practices are so crucial to healthy organizations. In fact, they are defining characteristics of them. And so many of the conversations that I've been having have been around, it's one thing to just sort of offer a set of what we think is the right set of, of expenses or of benefits or of well-being solutions. But how do we truly become equitable in how we deliver those, in the types of things that we deliver? And there was such a great story from one of your customers that I spoke to about the equity that, as they implemented Forma and they kind of, rolled this out globally, they shared a really powerful story of an employee who had a stove with a broken oven for months. And it's an expensive thing to buy. Appliances are not not an easy purchase. This employee was quietly just sort of cooking on a stove only. And when that LSA rolled out and they were able to actually apply a significant, and this is it's a good budget that this company offers their employees. When that was rolled out and the kind of the barriers were removed to what you could access, the employee was actually able to go out and buy a working stove and oven. And I mean, that kind of story, and we heard that repeatedly, it is about much more. I think what the flexibility allows in Forma is to be meaningful at scale, right? To have that meaning. There's no way that employee would have been able to share that story or come to HR to say, I need a new oven. But being able to have that flexibility and the dignity to be able to do that and make that purchase that they need was incredible. So I think that equity piece, that flexibility as well, we heard repeatedly that in our research that being flexible and responsive is really important. And again, that theme came through loud and clear. When you are responding faster than employees can even ask questions, I mean, it really is, it demonstrates trust and it builds that trust. And I think those are kind of the ones that pop for me.
For sure. Appreciate sharing all the stories there, Janet. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight here is what you mentioned, aligning benefit strategy to the business strategy, right? Because at the end of the day, these two really have to work firmly hand in hand. If you have a set of benefit strategy, the way that you design your programs is not really in sync with your business strategy, you're not going to be able to support your employees, your teams, your culture, your initiatives, your business goals in a way that really, have everybody sail in the same direction on the boat, right? And that's super important. There's a really funny, a really interesting question that we always ask in our business review with our customers. It never starts off with, okay, what do you want to do? How do you want to design your program? It always starts off with, what are your goals for the business this quarter or this half or this year, right? And what we usually do is we take a very consultative approach and say, okay, if these are your goals for the business, let's think about how, as a benefits team, we can also support your employees in making sure that employees can focus on their work, be able to do their best work in that context, right? Yeah. And I actually have two examples that I actually personally experienced in this context. Is one of them is with a customer, and at the onset of COVID, the biggest question that everybody was asking at the time, rewind 2.5, almost 3 years ago, was, oh my God, working from home, how do I support my employees? How do I keep them productive? How do I keep them healthy? How do I make sure that we give people the chance to feel safe, right? And still be able to contribute to the company's overall goals. And they actually fine-tuned their LSA program overnight to support their employees with PPE purchases, with grocery delivery for those who are sequestered at home. It really is, they were able to overnight fine-tune their benefit strategy to support employees who now are living a drastically different lifestyle, right? Another one was actually even more recent. One of our customers had a big population in Ukraine. And when the international conflict between Ukraine and Russia broke out, they wanted to say, hey, we don't know what's going to happen, but we want to be there to support our employees, right? So then again, overnight, within 1 to 2 days, they fine-tuned their LSA to support travel expenses, basic living standards, to really be able to support the population living in Ukraine, to give them, offer up as much support as they can, and really to see how the incident was developing. So again, two very good examples. This is, and I'll say, is a great way for the employer to support their employees in ways that the business is developing, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and another point, Jenna, is also what we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. Actually, it's qualitatively. I think everybody can agree on. Look, in a LSA is a very flexible design, right? Flexible benefits, giving employees a chance to choose while keeping the employer away from having to implement one point solution at a time. But a question that we get asked all the time is, well, what is the impact, right? How valuable do the employees see these program? And how do I potentially make a business case on an LSA program when we think about, hey, how much do I invest? How much am I getting out of it? What is the return on the investment that I do into this program? And one of the very unique studies that we want to share with everybody here on the call is we actually partnered with a renowned compensation research firm just a couple months ago, and we ran a conjoint study. And the goal was to say, hey, have employees rank and also be able to put a dollar value on a set of different benefits and find out how exactly, what is the way that we can allocate benefits funding so that we maximize perceived value, right? So we make sure that employees feel the most supported from a dollar standpoint. That way, we're able to pin down an ROI on the program. Long story short, we actually was able to put the perceived value for LSA at 52% plus. Wow. It's huge. It's a ton of leverage, right? Because it means that every dollar we invest into LSA program, it sort of makes sense intuitively, right? Because the employees be able to find use for themselves, they appreciate what the employers is doing for them. So the perceived value is high. Every dollar we put in is perceived as $1.52. Think about how much leverage we could gain from this. In fact, it actually came in on a list of 17 different programs, extra days off, mental health programs, 401k. LSA came in close second, just behind 401k match. They almost share number one spot on that list, and beating out 15 other different programs on that list, right? So learn a ton on this program, and we're actually going to introduce the actual research white paper that we have towards the end of the presentation, and hopefully that is a tool, right, for those folks on the call today. Like, how do we bring that case to the leadership? How do we articulate how much value the employees are getting out of it, alongside a lot of the amazing stories that we know we're able to tell, right? Employees feel supported in a way that matters to them the most.
Well, and I think, Jason, what's really powerful about that, and in the research, that sort of chart that I showed at the end, it is truly validation of what we in the benefits of health, health and benefits space have known for a long time, that health and well-being is about much more than just the right thing to do. This is a business driver. And, when we think about, and that is one of the things that is so important about this kind of research, yours, the study that you're going to be sharing, the results that I shared, it's not just about, at the end of the day, those people outcomes are crucially important. I mean, we need to know that we are keeping our people safe. We are improving, reducing absenteeism rates, the dollar amount of healthcare claim costs, all of those matter. But the benefit to the company as a whole, the bottom line financial performance, the innovation scores, the market leadership of organizations that are thriving are, significantly impacted by a real focus on health and well-being. So I love that. I think the proof is in the pudding, right? So
yeah, I mean, we're always finding evidence, right? Again, we hear this a lot from our customers and employees. Like, intuitively, it makes sense, right? We're getting the best of both worlds. It's really simple, and it gives the employer a ton of opportunity to adjust their benefit strategy in real time. At the same time, it gives the employees flexibility, right? But how can we make a business case? How do we make sure that we bring the numbers into the conversation? That has always been, a big focus that we work on with our customers. And Janet, want to get into the second question here. It's around, you mentioned one of the unique findings that you had while talking to a couple of our customers has been equality, right? How can we create an equitable experience across all? And one of the cases that I want to point out is one of our largest customers out there, 140,000 employees worldwide, 80 plus in different countries. Creating an equitable experience is that much harder, right? So I wanted to expand on this a little bit. Beyond an equitable experience for all, what have you found? What can you share more with the audience that you've learned from a large organization that put this type of in place?
Well, and I think that's such an important question because you're right. Equity and being equitable, not just in the the sort of the types of solutions you deliver, but really how those solutions are accessed is really important. And so one of the things that we talked about, this organization was sharing was um, the global nature of the organization, right? So and that means that comes with all of the sort of local regulatory pieces. It comes with cost of living differences and variations. It comes with language differences. It comes with, so, and it comes with any number of, sort of demographic differences across those organizations, across those regions. And so I think, what I heard from that organization, from a couple of others as well, is really that, as they rolled out Forma, and many roll it out globally right away, right? They're not really focused on just US or just North America. They're really thinking about this globally. It was a really important part of their decision making that this is a truly global solution, and that there is the flexibility built in very easily to accommodate or adjust to any region in the world, to be able to provide that same kind of level of an equal level of support and access across the across the globe. So that was a really big piece of it. The other part that I think was really interesting was the conversations that I had around the partnership that these companies have with with the Forma organization. And that came through very strongly, again, as they thought through how to approach different regions, different pockets or different populations. The advisory and kind of guidance that you were able to bring to bear with the intelligence that you have from all of your, I think you said, you named your customer number, and it's, you've got all of that incredible insight. And so sharing that back with the organizations as they're rolling out to really be able to answer those questions has been extremely important to them.
Yeah, appreciate sharing the insights here, Janet. Another question I wanted to pose was allocation of funds, right? And how do we make sure that we identify the budget? One of the interesting things that we learned from our customer base is that actually 78% of our customers funded their LSA program based on the reallocation of funds instead of having net new budget being added. And I know that funding is probably one of the biggest sort of a roadblock to funding an LSA program for a lot of for a lot of teams. Because again, I go back to intuitively, LSA program makes sense, right? Everybody is getting the most of this funding, but how do we get started? How do we put this in place? So I think there are a lot of interesting ways that we can actually find the budget to fund this program. And Janet, we'd love to hear your thoughts on what have you heard by talking to one of our customers who reallocated a lot of their real estate expenses into this. Can you maybe share some findings here?
Yeah, well, and the real estate is an interesting one, right? So again, I think this goes very back to that cooperation between HR and the business. And that really is the sort of the fundamental kind of starting point, is what is, this was a conversation, I think, more than just about, again, that siloed sort of back office, hey, let's put in a new solution. This drives a conversation about what does our organization look like going forward. And, many companies are at that decision-making point of, do we go forward and continue to be remote first? Are we hybrid? Are we, what are we doing with our facilities? How are we using those? And that was really, I think, sort of central to the decisions that one of your clients, had to kind of grapple with around how do we rethink and how do we let this sort of drive that conversation about who we are as an organization going forward? What is important to us? And then how do we show that? And that authenticity in those decisions is really, really important. Being able to say to, as in this case, being able to say, hey, we are putting our money where our mouth is, right? We are saying we want to be, in this case, remote first or fully remote in some cases. So we're going to make the adjustments to allow that, to encourage our employees to be able to do that. And some of your customers, as you well know, have significant budgets that are allocated to the LSA accounts for their employees, and many of them publicly publicly communicate that. We talked to an organization who makes it a part of their EVP, right? It's part of their employee value proposition, how they bring in new talent. It's very important to be able to show we have kind of invested here, because it is central to our philosophy of caring for our employees. So I think those conversations have to happen. HR, I think, has a role to facilitate them and to bring the business along as well.
Yeah, for sure. Really appreciate sharing all that insights, Janet. I know we're pressing right against the clock, running to the last minute. I just want to quickly come back and just say thanks to everybody for joining the call that we have today. There are two pieces of resources that I sort of teased up at the beginning I want to share with everyone. First one is this ROI of flexible benefits. It's a conjoint analysis that we ran with a third-party research facility, and it pins down a complete analysis around how valuable the LSA program could be in terms of perceived value for the employees. Another one is a benchmark data report that outlines from Foremost customer base, how are people designing their LSA, what are the categories they're allowing as an eligible expense. So these two pieces could be the cornerstone on how you think about an LSA strategy going forward, right? So I wanted to share these two pieces with you. If you go to Foremost website, you'll be able to find it. Well, don't feel the need to write these things down. We'll also send out follow-up emails to everybody here on the call. And that's it. Janet, really appreciate you spending time with us, sharing all the insights and the study results. I'm sure we'll be doing more webinars like this in the future. And I hope that everybody have a great rest of the day. And until next time we meet again.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all. Appreciate it.